Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. We have a special guest here today, Jeff from iZotope. Great to see you, man.
Likewise.
Always a pleasure to have you come back and show us the cool new stuff that you guys have been working on.
I'm happy to be here. It's always awesome.
And you have something really exciting for us to check out. You've got the latest version of Neutron, which you were calling it witchcraft earlier, and I think that's appropriate because what you're doing is it's beyond belief. Tell us what's new in Neutron 3.
So I'll cover the big kind of crunchy bits. The first thing is we have this thing called Mix Assistant, and this is the idea that you can throw Mix Assistant on either a track or a whole mix and get a really good result. So if you're using on an individual track, it'll EQ and compress the track for you, give you a starting point. But the brand new thing is this Balance Assistant, which is part of Mix Assistant, which gives you a great overall balance, which is really the foundation upon which the rest of the mix is built. You get the balance right. You can move forward with confidence, mixing, EQing, all the rest of it. So Balance Assistant, I think, is going to help people get a big head start when they're mixing.
Right, and what that does is kind of set up the basic starting point for the levels of all your different tracks. And you can still use Visual Mixer, you can still go back later and use Track Assistant to work on the individual tracks. So you can dig deep into that, but it just gives you a great starting point.
Exactly, it's just that initial balance, which is the foundation of your mix. And from there you can go on, like you said, EQ, compress. One of the new toys with Neutron 3 is the Sculptor module, which uses spectral shaping to enhance your tracks, make them the best version that they can be, help situate them within the context of a busy mix. So Balance Assistant, Sculptor, also resizability. You can resize any module in the plugin component or mothership level. It looks different, it behaves differently, and we're really excited about it.
You were talking about how you've even made it so much more efficient and how much faster it loads.
That's right. So now it'll load 3 times as fast as Neutron 2. It uses less memory, less CPU. If you have, let's say, hypothetically 100 neutrons in your session, that session will load in under 20 seconds. So big pain point for people coming from Neutron 2 is like, I love it, I want to use all the power, but it's a little bit intensive on the CPU. We've addressed that, and we're really happy to unveil that for people with Neutron 3.
Incredible. Give us the demo. I got to check this out.
Okay. Let's jump into what's new in Neutron 3. I'm going to walk through some of the brand new features, Mix Assistant, Sculptor, resizability. There's a lot to cover. So I want to start with, I think, the marquee feature, which is our Balance Assistant technology. What the balance is the foundation of the mix. So setting the guitar right, setting the vocals right, setting the drums right. This is something seasoned mix engineers do and know how to do because it's essential for starting a mix. You need to get all those levels right and then move on to compression, EQ, etc. We have a new tool called Balance Assistant, which can get you started and do this kind of for you in a way so that you can focus more on the creative stuff with mixing, reverb, EQ, all that stuff. Now, there are a couple of steps. It's a bit like baking a cake. We have to follow a recipe, and the first thing you have to do is drag in all your tracks into an empty session, like here. I'm going to drag them in to the start of my session, drop them there, press OK, and now we have all the tracks in Logic. Open X here to open this window, and I'm going to place an instance of Relay across all of these tracks. By selecting them first, going to Relay. Now it adds them all. Now Relay is a channel operations plugin. It's very lightweight, CPU light. You can control gain, panning, width, but its real function is to communicate between Mix Assistant and the tracks, sending information about the gain and information about the instrument to the kind of mothership where things are going to be balanced. So we need to put it on every track. You can also do this with Neutron, but we kind of recommend using Relay because it's a little bit more CPU light, just easier to kind of spread around the mix the first step. So I'll close this. Now I'll head to my master track, stereo out. You might have to create one in Pro Tools, but in Logic there's one already kind of baked in. And I'll open the Visual Mixer, which is back but expandable now. You can bring it the whole size of the screen if you want. The canvas is totally up to you. So we also have this little icon up here, Mix Assistant. So this is the kind of start of our balancing. So I'm going to press it, and we get this setup screen telling you exactly what I have been doing here. So placing an instance of Relay on all the tracks, and then making sure that all of your pan pots are at midnight, 12 o'clock, and all of your faders are at unity gain. So we've already done that. I'll press begin. And now we have to set a focus for the mix. So the focus is what you want to prioritize over everything else. It could be a vocal, it could be a guitar, it could be a synth, depending on the genre, but we have to choose at least one thing to be the focus of the mix. So for me, it's a couple of vocals here. So I'm going to go down, and Relay has shared all the information about the tracks as far as their tags go into the balance system here. So I can see my lead Vox 1, that's one thing I want to make the focus. The 26 here, Vox Bridge, that's another thing I want to make the focus, and 31 is also something I want to make the focus. And I know that because I know the session very well. It might be good for you to kind of listen through and make sure that you know what you want to click. But having the track information shared from Relay into Visual Mixer is really handy, so you can kind of situate yourself and go, oh, there's my vocal, there's my guitar. So I'll press begin listening, and you want to make sure that your track is playing from the very beginning. So you want to make sure that your transport bar here is all the way at the beginning of the mix, and now you just press the space bar, and we see this little icon showing up here with these musical notes going into the ear. And this tells you that the listening pass is starting. So as you're listening, you're not going to hear anything changing in the background. With some of our assistive audio technology like Track Enhance or Repair Assistant, you might hear things moving and kind of switching around in the background. This is different though. You're not going to hear anything changing. It's actually just kind of receiving audio, interpreting audio using some machine learning to identify the instrument, and also just taking in LUFS levels from the tracks to determine, based on your focus, where the levels should be set. So don't worry if you don't hear anything. That's totally normal. What you do have to make sure though is that you play it from the beginning to the end. There's no offline process. This has to happen in real time. And for that reason, we actually have this little icon built in called Neutron Tips and Tricks. You can press this and go to our website and read about mixing and mastering if you like. You can make a coffee. You can also, get a notepad and a pen and just take down maybe stuff that you hear in the mix. This is a good time for you to listen to what's actually in the session. So often we reach for a compressor, an EQ, we just dive in and start mixing, but it's important to listen and take stock of what's happening in the session. And this might spark ideas for things you want to do later on, avenues you want to go down. You might hear some issues on the track that you might want to RX. So this is actually a really good time for you to sit and kind of listen to what's happening, but we have to go from the start to the finish.
I came to say what's on my mind. Know that I'm stacking, stacks rolling up as I'm mashing, wasting the weight of my passion. Youngin' was born with the heart of a lion, but spit with the flow of a dragon. I'm macking up. Just made a way. I can't complain. I'm seeing.
Like a good mix engineer, I'm going to wait till everything decays and fades out. We've reached the end. So I'll press the space bar to stop transport. And now I'll press this icon, go to results. And from here, we see the brand new balance screen. So from here, we can see 5 different buckets. We have the vocal bucket right here, voice, focus. This is everything that's in our focus group. Bass, everything that's bass, and percussion and musical as well. And we can control them a little bit like VCA sliders and bring things up or down. You'll notice that when we bring musical up or down, everything musical goes up and down. And that's because using machine learning, we've determined what the musical tracks are and put them into that bucket. Same thing with voice and bass and so on and so forth. But if you want, you can actually go in and see what the machine learning slotted where by going to this little edit classification button, clicking on it, and going through and making sure that things are where they need to be. If you notice that something's out of place and it's totally normal to get a false positive, you can change that. So for example, the electronic kick, it thought that was musical, so we'll go over here, percussion. For the bass, it thought that was musical, bring that to bass. So this is always good to go in and just double check that things are where they need to be. I'll change this to percussion as well, and this to percussion as well. So I can close that window. And let's do a little before and after we've classified our tracks over a little loop here. And this is just the default, so we haven't actually changed any of these sliders. This is just the custom balance that Mix Assistant is providing for us. So let's have a listen to how that sounds.
Breakers, we winning like that. We've been working the streets for a minute like that. What? Who you know got it like that? Who you know running, make batters get laughed? What? Who you know got it like that? Spin what I make, but I get it right back. What? Like that. Working the streets for a minute like that. What?
So the default sounds really good, but I do want to make some changes, and we invite people to do that. That's why we have these sliders which you can control here. So I'll do that now. I'll bring up musical a little bit.
Breakers, we winning like that. We've been working the streets for a minute like that. What? Who you know got it like that? Who you know running, make batters get laughed? What? Who you know got it like that? Spin.
So I brought up the bass, the percussion, musical. I'll bring up the focus a little bit.
Breakers, we winning like that. We've been working the streets for a minute like that.
Now let's try another couple before and afters to make sure that we're kind of in the ballpark.
Breakers, we winning like that. We've been working the streets for a minute like that. What? Who you know got it like that? Who you know running, make batters get laughed? What? Who you know got it like that? Spin what I make, but I get it right back. What? Give it right back, work 10 to 10, I'm committed like that, but
We haven't done any compression, any EQ, any reverb. This is all the power of a really great balance, which Mix Assistant can help you with so that you can get started with all that fun stuff, that creative stuff, much faster. So in a nutshell, that is balance that's part of Mix Assistant, and it's totally genre agnostic. So if you're throwing a metal track, a hip hop track, a rock track, anything through this, it'll get you started with a great level. The next thing I want to talk about is the Sculptor module. This module is brand new in Neutron 3, and it uses a technology called spectral shaping, which is kind of like a combination between EQ and compression to mold, smooth, shape your track toward an ideal target. The instruments often take on different profiles, EQ-wise and compression-wise, once they're embedded in the context of a busy mix. So we built our targets from that. So this is a great way for you to quickly insert a drum, bass, guitar, vocal, anything, and help it fit in the mix. And the more Sculptors you use, we find the better the instrument separation is across the whole mix. And this leads to usually a really healthy tonal balance overall. So I'm going to jump in and show you how the Sculptor module works. We have a little clean guitar here. It sounds like this. I've opened Sculptor as a component plugin, so not within the whole mothership of Neutron. In advanced only, you can get all the kind of breakout component plugins. And this is the screen that you're met with when you open Sculptor for the first time. You see these targets I was talking about a minute ago. We have bass, guitar, keys, orchestral, percussion, voice. We have even one for dialogue for people doing post-production. We have all-purpose as well, and this is if you're looking to do something on the whole mix or on a mix bus or something like that. Because we're working with guitar, I'm going to go to the folder here and we get the subfolder Acoustic, Clean Electric, and Distorted Electric. Now while this track isn't really distorted electric, I really like the way that this target sounds. So I'll click it, and now I'm going to mess around a little bit with the settings here. The first is the intensity. Tone, this changes the profile from a bright or maybe a darker profile, and speed is the ballistics, the attack and release of the compressor settings, how quickly or slowly you want them to behave and react. So let's go before and after here. I'm going to bring the mix slider so we can go parametric and blend the signal in as much as we want to taste. But I'm going to use this as my A/B, my before and after. So we'll start before and go after and slowly blend it in. And of course, just like any other module in Neutron 3, it's completely resizable. And also, if you just want to target the firepower of Sculptor on one particular area of the spectra, just bring in these little sliders here, and you can just really focus the kind of special sauce of Sculptor to just affect one area. I'm going to widen it though, and let's do some before and afters in the mix. And I have a little loop here set up. There we go. We've sculpted things toward a more ideal version of this guitar. Let's keep moving through these other tracks here. I have a drum bus, which on its own sounds pretty good. So I've just opened up the kind of mothership just to show you what it looks like when it's hanging out in this sort of larger context in this suite. Go here and find it, Sculptor right there. And now, because this is a drum bus, I'm going to go to the all-purpose folder, and add polish is one of the targets that I really like. Now, in case we go into the red, which we're seeing on the output here, we can always introduce the limiter in the mothership and just control for that a bit like a protection circuit to make sure that we don't rise above this ceiling that I placed here. So let's do some before and afters on that. Now it's thumping a bit more, it's a bit more clear. Let's do the same for a piano. It's a little dull, so we'll go to keys, and I'm going to go to piano, because that's what we're listening to. Now let's brighten it up a little bit. And let's do some before and afters there as well. So here's before. Now let's do a big before and after, everything before Sculptor and then after. So I'll just start the loop. Turn everything on. So, in addition to brightening and situating things within a mix, Sculptor is also really good at tackling problems like resonance. And I'm going to show you how to tackle that resonance within seconds. Here's what it sounds like kind of on its own. When you open the actual Sculptor plugin, you see this preset menu here. iZotope is known for amazing and plentiful amounts of presets. So we have them here too, in addition to the target. So if you're trying to pursue an activity like clearing resonance, just look at the presets to see if one of those things supports that activity. And in this case, we have right here, tame resonance. So I'll click this, press OK, and now watch what happens when I play the audio after choosing this preset. So it's smart enough using the spectral shaping to identify where the resonance is occurring and just kind of target its firepower in that area. But again, if we want, we can just localize it ourselves, even though it's pretty smart, it's figured it out, by bringing these little arms in. But in this case, it's left the rest of the harmonics untouched. So let's just do some before and afters there. There we go. So Sculptor is great for situating, brightening, warming up, but also getting rid of problems that could impede, your mix's tonal balance or get in the way of really making sure that the mix sounds as great as it could possibly sound. So it's very versatile, great for vocals, pretty much anything. If you look at the target list, we've really developed a number of targets to accommodate pretty much any mix component that you're working with. One of the things that Neutron is really known for is the masking meter. And masking is when you have perceptual loudness decrease between two elements in a mix that might be competing for the same territory in the frequency spectrum. So the classic battle of the ages in this respect is maybe a kick drum and a bass. They're kind of occupying the same territory. And with the masking meter, you can see if masking is occurring, and you can also move the parameters around in the EQs to tackle that and make sure that there is less masking or maybe no masking. So we do this at iZotope through inter-plugin communication, and this was one of the signature features when we launched Neutron. In Neutron 3, we have changed a little bit about the way that the masking meter works. So I'll show you the changes that we've made in this new view here. So I'm going to place an instance of Neutron 3 on the kick, and I'll do the same thing on the bass. So because we have a Neutron on the bass, we don't need to have a kick open and go back and forth to EQ them, because we can see everything from one of the Neutrons. So I'll go to the masking meter and I'll go find my kick. There it is right there. And now we can see the bass right here and the kick, and we can toggle between them as they play. So every time the kick thumps, we can see its orange kind of EQ profile from the bass's Neutron. Take another look. We can actually go over and see what's happening on the kick track by toggling over to the other tab. Now I can see the EQ profile and actually affect the EQ profile of the kick from the bass's neutron, thanks to interplugging communication. So the other thing I can see when I'm on my bass track is I see the orange profile, but I also see some flashing lights. We call these our northern lights, and they're in orange, and they indicate where masking could be occurring. So have another look and look for those kind of blips of light. So that's one kind of visual feedback indicator where things could be kind of overlapping with one another. We have another way for you to see this using the sensitivity meter. As I increase this, you'll see a little histogram, little pink columns show up at the top of the screen where some critical areas of masking could be between the two tracks. And again, the nice thing is I can really increase the canvas and fine-tune this EQ when I want to make my moves. Knowing that there's masking going on, the histogram has kind of confirmed that. The northern lights are showing that we have a little bit of activity here at the 100 hertz mark. We could make some decisions about what we want to do. We could either go into the kick track and lower its energy, or we can just make room for the kick on the bass track by bringing down some energy from the bass. So I'm going to do just that. I'm going to bring this down here and just create a little bit of a pocket. See what this histogram is showing? There's some masking right at that area to make sure that we're not so kind of bumping up against each other between these two tracks. Now I'm going to go over to the kick and maybe strengthen it where I lowered the bass. So I'll make the kind of opposite. I'll make a mirrored boost and cut here. So go over here, bring this over, just widen the Q a little bit. Really easy to get around the EQ here. Simple controls. This widens the Q. You can bring it up. We really encourage people with this new UX and UI to go in and just kind of touch the audio and bring it down, manipulate it to taste. So from here, I can make sure that everything's working in context by going over to the bypass EQs and pressing this, and this will disable both EQs so I can kind of check my work. The kick is coming through a lot more. The bass has been kind of weakened in that area. And as a result, I'm not hearing as much masking happening between the two of them. So what I did was a little bit of demasking work, but I'm going to show you a way to do it really quickly with the inverse link function, which allows you to make a mirrored boost and cut across the two tracks simultaneously. I'll show you how that works. I'm going to return my nodes here to their original states, turn on inverse link, and now when I dip on the bass track, you see a little trace line here showing that we're going up on the kick. So we've made a mirrored boost and cut. And now let's bypass that and see how that sounds. And of course, this works with any node. So if I want to make a bit of a shelf here on the bass, for some reason, we see the opposite happening on the kick drum. So that's a really easy and handy way to make very surgical boosts and cuts across both tracks simultaneously. We also have dynamic EQ nodes as well. So it's not just static boost and cut. We can have these guys react to things happening in other tracks. So I'm going to reset everything, and I'm going to go back to my, just reset both EQs here. And let's say that I want the bass to go down every time the kick is kind of knocking in that area. So I'll go and create a low shelf here. I'll turn inverse link off because otherwise it'll do the same thing on the other side. There we go. Lucky that gain trace is there to make sure you can check your work. And I'll go into this little partition and I'll make it dynamic. which means it's going to react every time signal crosses a certain threshold. And what I'm going to do is sidechain the bass to the kick. So every time the kick is active, the bass is going to go down to sort of let it through. I'll go into Logic, make the sidechain input the kick, go to sidechain here, make it external, make it full signal, and now let's have a look. So now every time the kick is hitting, the bass is going down. I can make the distance traveled a bit more dramatic by going down here and bringing the threshold down even more. So now we're going to get some real pumping happening. You can also do the same thing on the other side. So if we wanted, we could actually increase the energy on the kick track without having any sidechaining, just using a dynamic node to boost energy in the region that we want. So instead of attenuating, we can boost. I'll show you how to do that. So I'm going to go over to my kick track, again, from my bass's Neutron, and I'll create, with one of these nodes here, a bit of a mountain, a bit of a boost there. And now I'm going to go over to the side, make it dynamic, and bring the threshold down. And I'm going to, instead of making it attenuate and go down, I'm going to make it go up by pressing this up arrow. So now every time there's energy in that region, it's going to lift it up a little bit. Have a look. So this is a great way to just add energy thanks to dynamic nodes without having to sidechain. Let's do a little before and after on that. I'll bypass the EQ. So now we get very focused, targeted boosting of this specific area in the frequency spectrum, thanks to the dynamic node. In the advanced version of Neutron 3, we now have Track Enhance. There's Track Assistant that's still in the Elements and Standard version, but I want to show off Track Enhance a little bit on a vocal. We have a vocal right here, not much on it right now, just disable Neutron so that there's no coloration. Sounds like this.
Did right back, worked in the 10, I'm committed like that, but I might celebrate cause we winning like that. We've been working the streets for a minute like that.
I'm going to use Track Enhance to kind of spruce it up a little bit. I'm going to bring the Mothership plugin right here on the track, resize it because we can now, and I'll go to Mix Assistant and we see two tabs. We have Track Enhance and Balance. We don't want to do Balance because we already did that at the beginning. Now we want to focus the kind of firepower of our assistive audio technology on one element of the mix. And for that, we're going to use Track Enhance, which is going to listen to the audio and create a custom preset to fit the track. I'm going to press Next, and from here I'm asked a couple of questions. Users from Neutron 1 and 2 will be familiar with this screen. It's changed a little bit, namely that we have more instruments that you can choose to get things started. The other thing that's changed is that it speaks to Sculptor, which is really cool. It puts that at the very beginning of the chain, which is super helpful. We can have it detect what instrument is on this track. It's pretty smart. I'm going to leave it on auto detect. We could tell it that it's a voice, but we'll just leave it on auto. We have styles, warm, balanced up front. Warm is very low end heavy. Balanced is kind of the best of both worlds. Bit of brightness, bit of kind of warmth on the bottom, and up front is all the firepower on the kind of mid-range and treble. So I'll leave it right down the middle. And the intensity is how hard we want to push the processing of Neutron to fit one of these styles here. I'll leave it on medium just to kind of play safe here. I'll press Next. And just like with all our assistive audio tech, it needs to receive information to know what to do next. So I'll press the space bar.
Get it right back, worked in the 10, I'm committed like that, but I might celebrate.
As you can see, it's super transparent. It's telling us exactly what it's doing as it's listening to the audio and interpreting it. So it's setting up a signal chain, it adds EQ. I was talking and it's already done. So in about 12 seconds, it can figure out what instrument type is on there and adjust the settings accordingly as a starting point for you. So I'll press Accept. So I mentioned the machine learning aspect of our plugins. Here it is manifesting itself. It's figured out in the Sculptor that we have vocals on the track, and it's set the vocal target for us on Sculptor. It's set an EQ over here. It's added some nodes where it might have heard some resonance. It's added a compressor, which by the way looks amazing now in Neutron 3.
I'm committed like that, but I might celebrate cause we winning like that. We've been working the streets.
It added another compressor right after, and at the last stage, an exciter just to kind of boost things up a little bit. Let's have a listen to the before and after. Here's before.
Get it right back, work 10 to 10, I'm committed like that. But I might celebrate cause we winning like that. We've been working the streets for a minute like that.
And after.
Get it right back, work 10 to 10, I'm committed like that. But I might celebrate cause we winning like that. We've been working the streets for a minute like that.
But of course, this is just a starting point, which means that you can go in, add more bands on the multiband compressor, just like that. Just click to add them if you want. Exciter is also multiband, so we can add more bands. We can go to the Sculptor, increase the brightness, for example, or the intensity of the spectral shaping.
Get it right back, work 10 to 10, I'm committed like that. But I might celebrate cause we winning like that. We've been working the streets for a minute like that.
We could also add another module. Maybe we want to bring the transient shaper in at the very end. It's totally up to you. But the point is, with the machine learning and assistive audio technology, we can build a great custom preset to just help you mix that much faster and more efficiently.
Jeff, that's absolutely amazing. The mix assistant, the balance, I mean, all that stuff is it's just incredible. I don't know how you guys do it.
Well, we really appreciate that. We want to make sure that with every next generation of our plugin, it's more revolutionary than evolutionary, and means a lot coming from you.
Right, well, thank you very much. Whether you're an experienced mixer or not, having a place that starts you out and gets you going is just so important, and it speeds the whole process up so much. I think it's an incredible tool. People are really going to love this.
Well, thank you very much, Mitch. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming out. Always a pleasure to see you.
Likewise.
And thank you for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute. I'm Mitch Gallagher.